Hi, we are Group 7 and we have chosen to conduct a research on world happiness in the year 2019 for our final project. To begin, world happiness is crucial not only in society, but also in every aspect of our lives. Every day, we as human beings work and strive towards achieving happiness, and in that very sense, we have chosen to dive further into learning more about the happiness levels in the world. Within our presentation and executive report, we will examine how different external factors contribute to the overall state of happiness of each country and the correlations that are present in the dataset we have found. The first factor that we have found to contribute towards world happiness is the GDP per capita of each country. To preface, the standard of living in every corner of the world is a significant element in gauging the level of happiness. The standard of living shows how well each individual is able to sustain themselves through their ability to purchase and consume goods and services, and through that, it directly correlates to the GDP per capita. The term GDP per capita is a financial metric that breaks down a country's economic output per person, and looking at the map of the world, it is noticeable that there are different shades of green. The darker green is a representation of a higher GDP per capita ranking score, while a lighter green is depicted as a lower ranking score. Countries such as the United States and Australia are in a darker shade of green compared to countries like India and Nigeria. It goes to show that economies in countries that are either a first or third world country play a role in GDP. When we look at all of this, we can determine that each country has their own specific economic problems that are affecting their GDP per capita ranking. The next variable affecting the overall happiness of the world is the health and life expectancy of each country. The health and life expectancy map demonstrates the score of the average health and lifespan of an individual in their respective countries, and each country can be perceived by a deeper shade of red, reflecting a higher impact and correlation of health, life expectancy, and happiness, while a lighter shade of red illustrates countries with a lower health expectancy score in correlation with happiness. Similar to the GDP per capita, these results in health expectancies may also be affected by how developed a country is. Countries in well-developed areas are able to make huge advancements in research and medicine to extend the lifespan of an individual or to be in a better economic state to afford goods that are not affordable in lower countries. All in all, these countries are in different parts of the world where they are affected by many other unique influences, such as the air quality, geographic location, medical advancements, weather, or maybe crime levels.
Now, moving on to the generosity variable and its correlation to happiness, we can see a visual representation of the countries that have high scores of happiness coming from generosity and those that have lower scores of the generosity variable. The way that we read these maps are based on the shade of the color. The countries and regions that have a lighter shade of green, such as Russia and South America, reflect low scores of generosity. Countries and regions that, such as the US, Canada, and Australia, have higher levels of generosity reflected through a deeper shade of green. The insight that we gain from this visualization is that countries who tend to do better economically tend to have higher levels of generosity, such as the US, whereas the other countries, such as those in South America, do not reflect high scores of GDP per capita and also have low scores of generosity. This highlights the correlation between GDP per capita and generosity. The US has one of the most volunteer hours contributed by its citizens in the entire world, which is accurately reflected on the visual in a deeper green shade. On the other hand, it is sometimes more difficult to be generous when one's economic means are low or weak. Another example from this illustration is Russia reflecting a light shade of green, which reflects its low generosity score. This makes logical sense as Russia in reality is a place where the culture does not tend to focus much on giving or being generous. Their focus is on other variables that are more important to their dictator. Under this dictatorship, individuals have less autonomy and less choice to give or to be generous at all. Now, on the variable of social support, we can see that this is the highest scoring variable overall when linked to a country's overall happiness score. We also discovered that the top 5 ranked countries in social support also appear in the top 5 overall happiest countries. As it shows visually and numerically, social support is by far the most influential variable on happiness from our dataset. We learn from this analysis that social support or community is essential to building our society, making it better, and making the world a happier place. Social support has proven to be the strongest factor correlated to high happiness scores. An interesting takeaway from this map is how Russia is reflected as having a high social support score, correlating to a higher happiness score. However, this provides somewhat of a false or skewed assumption that Russia is a happy place to live in. In reality, it is not a very preferable or happy place to be. There's less freedom, less choice, and overall, citizens are less satisfied. It is important to further research the context of data and to further investigate the reality of what we believe the data is telling us. The numbers and the context must match. To wrap up all of our analyses into one, we created a dashboard to reflect our findings. This dashboard reflects our 5 different analyses on world happiness. Here we can visually see through a side by side comparison that the countries that are near, lie on, or below the equator rank lower on all variables that we use to measure happiness. In the central areas of the world, we can also see fainter shades of color, reflecting lower happiness scores in correlation to these variables. Nevertheless, the context of these countries or regions should be considered and acknowledged in analysis. We cannot simply state that all countries in these parts of the world are less happy, but rather we can further investigate why this may be the cause. Perhaps they have different priorities, less resources, or less economic stability. All in all, context adds to our understanding of our dataset, allowing us to turn our insights into actionable intelligence, which we will discuss later in this presentation.
Another analysis we created focused on the top 5 countries in overall rank, which, according to the dataset, were the 5 happiest countries in 2019. Finland tops the list, followed by Denmark, Norway, Iceland, and the Netherlands. With this shorter list, we looked at the 4 categories in GDP, healthy life expectancy, generosity, and social support, and compared and analyzed their rankings. Here's what we found. With the exception of Finland's ranking 92nd in generosity, the top 5 countries' ranks in all 4 categories are in the top 25th percentile. They do not have a rank that is in the bottom half of the dataset. Despite Finland's exception, Finland is the number 1 ranked country in the world in terms of happiness. And finally, of the 4 categories that we measured, we found that, again, social support has the strongest indicator and correlation to happiness in that country or region. Here again, we can see that 4 of the top 5 ranked countries in social support are also top 5 in the overall happiness rank. What we found. Using the top 5 countries as an example, the categories we selected do show positive correlation in terms of happiness ranking. The dataset essentially tells us that happiness is a combination of many different factors, and as such, it cannot be measured so simply. For example, money alone doesn't buy happiness, living longer does not mean you will be happier, and being surrounded by generosity is not enough to boost your happiness score. All of our analyses point to the idea that happiness is a spectrum. Countries like Myanmar and Indonesia rank first and second in generosity, but are 131st and 92nd in overall happiness rank. But that isn't saying that Myanmar and Indonesia aren't or can't be as happy as, say, Finland or Denmark. The data we analyze puts happiness into a math equation and calculates happiness using a variety of factors that are skewed and unequal when comparing 155 countries. But happiness is in every corner of the world and can be derived from just about anything. It is a difficult task to measure happiness or find trends and hidden meanings within it.
How can this data be used? Using the data, we can develop new technology to increase the level of happiness among the citizens of the world. Within the 3 factors, social support, generosity, and healthy life expectancy, generosity might be difficult to overcome or change. However, there are steps we can develop to improve social support and healthy life expectancy. When it comes to social support, we can develop new AI and computer programs that have the ability to examine and learn citizen level of satisfaction with the present social support given by the government. Therefore, when citizens are not very happy with the current level support, officials can dig deep into the data and focus exactly on what is needed to improve his habitat, satisfaction, and eventually their happiness. In terms of life expectancy, we found that countries with higher level of investment tend to have higher level of happiness among the citizens. Thus, we can apply the same principle to lesser developed nations. This can be done by creating a program that automatically suggests the percentage of a country budget that can go into improving the healthcare system through allocating funds to specific area of the system that need the more attention. For example, patient care, quality of doctor, nurses, or the ability to develop new medicine. When the aspects are improved, it will not only increase the life expectancy of the citizens, but also their happiness, which which will ultimately increase the level of trust that a citizen has on their leader, which I think is an important factor that will determine the stability of a nation. In conclusion, the data set is very interesting and offer many insightful detail we have not thought of before. With the help of Tableau visualization tool, we were able to unpack and understand the aspect. The new discovery arrived from the data offer great information that allow us to create new variable, which is then used to create a scoring system to rank them based on their impact. And after a careful analysis, it is clear that social support had the greatest impact on world happiness.
And
Thank
that
you.
concludes our presentation. Thank you.